And so what we did is we took the track, the music itself, and that was done to playback, and people sang to playback except for James Brown, and we recorded his lead vocal live.
When you shoot someone live, lip sync's not a problem because they're live. In the first movie, John Lee Hooker is live, James Brown was live, Ray Charles was playback, Aretha was playback, and all the Blues Brothers stuff was playback. But it really makes no difference because you still, the artists are the ones who perform it regardless. It's for technical reasons whether it's live or not.
Dan Aykroyd is a motorhead. The character of D-Day in Animal House was actually based on Danny Aykroyd by Harold Ramis and Chris Miller and Doug Kenny. And I didn't know Danny at that time. And I learned later that, hey, this is this guy. You know, he likes bikes, he likes motorcycles. He likes, Danny's idea of a good time is to get in his car in Los Angeles and drive to New York, straight. You know, he enjoys that.
Well, I've always liked cars, but I was really writing, I mean, the whole concept of the Bluesmobile and why it was an old police car was basically Elwood's concept. It was, you know, sort of living inside the character.
Elwood is a genius driver. He does extraordinary things with this car.
The car's got a lot of pickup. It's got a cop motor, a 440 cubic inch plant. It's got cop tires, cop suspension, cop shocks. It's a model made before catalytic converters, so it'll run good on regular gas. What do you say? Is it the new Bluesmobile or what? Fix a cigarette lighter. At
that time, the hottest police car in America was the Dodge Monaco with the 440 cubic inch engine. And that, you know, became the Bluesmobile because, you know, Elwood knew that he had to stay at least, if not one jump ahead of the law, at least, you know, on the same kind of technological footing with them. So that's really Elwood's call.
Aykroyd actually decorated the thing. That's why you saw those cigarette packs, and I think they were Chesterfield King, right? Cigarette packs had to be matches, gum wrappers, you know.
There were lots of different Bluesmobiles. There were Bluesmobiles that were specifically for high-performance driving, stunt driving.
Basically, the idea of the magic car came from me. I mean, I finally just said, Danny tends to want to explain this stuff. In fact, in the new movie, he had this whole thing where, at one point in the new film, the car goes underwater, and Danny wanted to show, you know, propellers coming out. And I said, "That's James Bond. That's, you know, we don't have Q. It's a magic car, Danny. It does it because I said so. You know." I mean, what's one of the things about film? You show people, there it is, you know. You want a giant bug, there's your giant bug. You don't have to explain your giant bug, there it is, you know.
A couple of scenes that were omitted from the first movie. One was, one of my favorite was, sort of explained how the Bluesmobile got imbued with special powers to do backflips and that. And it was that we parked it in a secret hiding place under the L train in Chicago in a transformer room, which I had a key. And the room opened up with these big steel plate doors, and inside were these humming transformers, and the Bluesmobile sort of parked in there every night and sort of absorbed the power of the electrical transformers under the L train.
Well, we actually shot a scene. We shot a scene where you saw it was stored under this transformer. The big electrical hum was part of the Peter Gunn thing, and I cut it out. You know, when the movie was too long, I had to cut stuff, and quite honestly, I think I said to Danny, "Are you going to go with each print and explain to people, see how we're parked near this transformer? That's why the car can do this stuff. Because that makes no sense, you know." It's like, you know. But Danny said it made sense.
The Bluesmobile that was supposed to tumble end over end, and originally the notion was to launch the miniature, and the miniature itself was about 4.5 feet long. And there were all these novel ways that the effects guys were proposing to do that, and we kept we started going out to see some of these tests, which really fizzled one after the other. And what we finally decided was to get a bunch of guys and just throw it in the air, and I think that's the way we did it.
And then cut to the Nazi station wagon being dropped. over the Lower Wacker area, a vacant lot, and we had a target zone of 50 by 50 feet. And
I remember there was a specific thing where we wanted to drop the Pinto belonging to the Illinois Nazis past the you wanted to see it fall past the skyline, and so how we were going to do that was actually drop the Pinto from a helicopter. We had to have the Ford Pinto certified by the FAA. They actually wanted to know about its unairworthiness because they were afraid it might have, be like an airfoil and somehow in the middle of the drop go sailing off over Lakeshore Drive. So we had to do drop tests where we dropped the Pinto from the helicopter, had to hit a specific place. We were using the area where they store salt that gets spread during the snowstorms of the winter, that has nothing on it during the summer and is away from a populated area, although it is within the city. And so we proved to the FAA in the city that we could hit a mark, and we dropped this Pinto and it fell right on the X where we wanted it and flattened it. It was about this high when we got done with it. But that's how we were able to do that shot.
I've always loved you.
We were fortunate enough to find the Dixie Mall in Harvey, Illinois. This was an abandoned mall. It was a 1 in a million. I mean, you just don't go around finding these things abandoned. And in fact, we felt like archaeologists from the 31st century or something, going into this place with our flashlights. All the power was off, dust flying everywhere, and the place had been closed for over a year.
I'm proud to say we were the first movie to trash a mall because I thought, And so that sequence came out of Location Scout.
It was just perfect for what we wanted. And we ended up shooting there for, like, I think a week.
At the beginning, before they go in the mall, there's this giant parking lot that they drive around. And it's like, well, how are we going to fill this parking lot? So I remember we made a deal to get brand new cars. Every car in that parking lot is a brand new car that's just there to fill up the parking lot, because otherwise we couldn't fill the parking lot. And I remember, like, the production manager saying, don't hit any of those cars.
You got us into this parking lot, pal. Now you get us out. You want out of this parking lot? Okay.
Would there be anything else?
Yes, do you have a Miss Piggy?
It had, I think, 140 or 130 stores originally. And actually, we did them all over. We went in there and remodeled the whole works, put in breakaways, and decorated all those stores.
We had stores that were being dressed by people that had franchises that were there, and they came down and dressed them themselves. And there were two types of stores. Ones we could wreck and ones we couldn't wreck.
Pants and burgers. Yeah. Lots of space in this mall.
We had hired, I won't say their names, but the most famous private security police force in the country. And we had hired them to guard, because we had millions of dollars of merchandise in there. And we made a deal with a lot of suppliers. Anything we didn't break, we didn't have to pay for, So we had guards there, and things were being stolen. And finally called the police, and it turned out the guards were doing the stealing.
We had to get guards to watch the guards.
And background action. Enjoying yourself.
And in the mall, all those stunt guys weren't drivers. All those stunt guys were everyone on foot in the mall are stunt people. So that's where the huge numbers came in,
I do remember that Danny Aykroyd thought that shooting at that mall was just one of the greatest things he'd ever seen. That he'd thought this up, and here it was. This bizarre car chase combining, consumer goods and police cars, and his own mall. And I'll never forget just the sheer delight that this, idea he'd had late one night was now being played out in a very big way.
Part of the joke of the first Blues Brothers is size. I mean, everything's gigantic. I mean, everything's exaggerated to such a huge extent. So it was interesting. People were going, well, car crash, song. Gee, that doesn't compute.
I just couldn't describe events without getting in trouble and without people looking at me like, what have you got us into?
Yeah, well, we did run over, but the footage is going to be excellent. I tell you, it's movie history. I know. No, I think in this sequence we're going to be 2 days over. It'll all be on the screen, I promise. Okay, I'll see you in LA.
Obviously, you couldn't, one couldn't duplicate the first movie. It would cost too much. I mean, it cost $27 million then, which is much more than what we got now, actually. But that was a huge amount then. That was probably like 60 now. And we did this epic. I mean, we had 34 cars going 110 miles an hour in downtown Chicago. I don't think you could do that again.
Signal 1079er still engaged. Vehicle traveling southbound approaching Chicago city limits. Commander advises will contact Chicago precincts for local intercept. Maintain pursuit. Use of unnecessary violence in the apprehension of the Blues Brothers has been approved.
Just the fact of what it took to film that in Chicago, tying off, blocks and blocks of city streets and, multiple days of filming for really seconds of film.
We would shut down the city on weekends, I guess on Sundays. And we know when there wasn't a lot of traffic or people out. And, so hopefully no one would cross in front of us. And they had like, I don't know how many hundreds of PAs at every intersection, every alley, every doorway, so that no one would walk out and get hit.
Well, this is definitely Lower Wacker Drive. If my estimations are correct, we should be very close to the Honorable Richard J. Daley Plaza. That's where they got that Picasso. Yep.
We had great drivers. The doubles for Belushi and Aykroyd were Tommy Huff and Eddie Dono. And Tom Huff was a brilliant driver. And what we were doing in that movie that was unusual is they were going that fast. I mean, we were going 100 miles an hour. And so there's one shot in the movie when I shot it, I looked at it in dailies. I said, people are going to think I sped this up. So we reshot it with pedestrians on the sidewalk. It was probably a wasted effort, but there's a shot in the movie where you see the Bluesmobile coming towards us and around a corner and under the L train, followed by these 20-some police cars. They're going 100 miles an hour. So we put people on the sidewalk so you could see they were going 100 miles an hour. And what was complicated about that was in a city street, you have to make sure that all traffic is stopped. So we were shooting very early Saturday and Sunday mornings on a lot of this stuff. And make sure all traffic was stopped meant you had to have a PA with a walkie-talkie at every alley and street and lots of cops, for half a mile or a mile. So these were big undertakings, this stuff. We did big stuff.
Lots of effects, mechanical effects and visual effects that make that happen. And really one of the classic chases of all time. The Blues Brothers was really the first big picture allowed to shoot in Chicago since Daley had passed away. You may have heard that Daley had, Mayor Daley had come up with an edict that there would be no filming in Chicago. He wasn't going to allow it.
Partly because of an old M Squad episode where with Lee Marvin, where it showed a Chicago cop accepting a bribe. And Mayor Daley's, that's it.
One of the big issues, of course, given what we were planning, was how would we get permission to get the city of Chicago to let us film all of this?
We met with Mayor Jane Byrne. We had met with her to say how happy we were to be shooting in Chicago and so forth. And she asked, was there anything that she could do for us?
It was so Chicago, Mayor Byrne was very instrumental. And then other people, high-placed, these kind of people, helped us too, because, for instance, shooting in Daley Plaza, the Cook County Board said, no. So we went above them, to the people who owned the Cook County Board. This is no longer true in Chicago. And we were able. But it was amazing the cooperation we got from the city and from the police.
Good news. The mayor of Chicago is going to allow us to take over Daley Plaza and drive the Bluesmobile through the lobby of the state office building. Good news, we got the permission. Bad news, we got the permission.
Backyard action! Action!
Well, I think they got what they wanted. It worked pretty slick, yeah.
Oh, it worked terrific. They stopped good. Brakes worked real good.
How'd it look?
Looked terrific.
Oh. I can see that I have my eyes closed.
Well, the first thing I thought about was the Sam Fuller movies. I thought I was going to be making this great war movie. It got me into my, that's what went into my mind. I saw it as a battle sequence. And it really excited me because we had the tanks, we had the army, we had so much stuff going on.
We'd have conversations. How many ISPs, Illinois State Police cars? Well, we got like 60 ISPs and 42 Chicago City cop cars and the 17 ambulances.
150 National Guardsmen, 60 Chicago cops.
350 guns, there's 150 batons.
4 Sherman tanks, 3 helicopters.
700 pounds of prime rib.
And 400 troops. Okay, 400 troops. Well, if we got the 400 troops, then what about the SWAT team?
John Landis directed this movie as General Westmoreland might prepare a battle.
Come on, man! Screaming! Hustle, 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 hustle! Get those weapons ready, mister!
We had a place called the War Room, and in the War Room were maps of Chicago and aerial views, and this is where all the planning was done. If you're going to tie off major sections of Lower Wacker Drive or Lakeshore Drive, these things had to be carefully coordinated, and together with the assistant directors and the Chicago Police and Fire Departments, we staged some very, very big gags. From a logistics standpoint, I think the hardest number was the Calloway number, which was a giant, live, large concert that we actually shot here in Hollywood at the Palladium, and there were thousands of extras. In fact, so many that we had promoted the audience through a local radio station. And in between the setups, we're entertaining them with local disc jockeys and giving away prizes and so forth. And there were wardrobe changes and lighting effects and so on. I think that was logistically, as far as anything inside was concerned, was the most difficult.
You guys know Minnie the Moocher? I knew a hooker once named Minnie Mazzola. No, the song Minnie the Moocher.
Yeah, so what?
Hit it!
I had a rough start with Cab. He came to Chicago to pre-record Minnie, and he was quite taken aback by the tracks. He listened to them and he said, that's the way it sounded 50 years ago, because we were recording 50 years to the day he had written it. And I said, yeah, that's what I want. And he wanted to do a disco. He had just cut a disco version of Minnie the Moocher. And he told me he'd done Minnie Cha-Cha, done Minnie Twist, done Minnie Polka, done Minnie Rumba, you know, done all the major dance crazes. And he didn't understand why we wanted to do it this old fogey, old-fashioned way. And I told him because that's great. And that's what I want. He was very unhappy about it, in very bad mood. And he's sort of this old guy, and he went into the recording studio and went in and did a take. And afterwards said, how was that? And I said, I was unhappy with that, Cab. And his eyes got narrow. He said, what was wrong with it? So I said, well, it was mediocre. And you're Cab Calloway, so it should be great. And he said, oh, great? Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't tell me you wanted it great. He was really angry, so I was like real quiet. So he goes back in, he puts on the headphones, and we do another take, and it was great. And it's the one that's in the movie. It was great. But he finishes, and he takes off his headset, and he says, how is that? I said, that was great. He said, well, you got to tell me what you want. He just stormed out. And I thought, oh, shit. You know. But then when he showed up on location, he was lovely. And he had a really good time on the movie. And so there were no problems. But I tell you, it was a rocky start. I thought, uh-oh.
John Landis is something else. He is the greatest.
He loved sharing his experiences, and I don't know of anybody other than Duke Ellington who would have more stories. But the fact that he warmed up to us and wanted to, there was no aloofness, no distance. It made us feel very warm towards him. He was a sweet man. What a performer, man.
We used to sit down and talk. He used to talk about the times that, you know, like early days when he was shooting in Hollywood, the things that happened to him, you know.
Trailers.
And he was a very friendly dude.
I told Cab that one thing that got me was that he just went absolutely
straight ahead, you know. And he says, well, Lou, I learned something a long time ago. He says, when you got good musicians, you don't have to say anything. And if you don't have good musicians, there's nothing you can say.
Got any fried chicken?
Best damn chicken in the state.
Bring me 4 fried chickens and a Coke.
You want chicken wings or chicken legs?
4 fried chickens and a Coke. It's a good movie. It's about Chicago. It's about music.
It's about 2 hours.
There's no sex and no drugs in the movie.
I had actually a funny story happen with John that I've told before, but it wasn't funny at the time. But we were having quite a big fight. We were over here at Universal shooting the interior of the church on stage 29, and it involved drugs. And I was extremely angry about this cocaine, and I'd thrown away a bunch of cocaine, and John was furious, and we had a big fight. We went out on Lancashire. So there's Jake Blues, he's in drag, and I'm out there, and we're yelling. I mean, we're really mad, and we're having an argument. And he finally said, well, fuck this, and fuck you, and you're like that. And he sort of sticks his thumb out. I mean, I don't even, but this car coming the opposite way goes, ah! Makes a huge U-turn, this convertible, and there's this kid, real stoner, goes, hey, John Belushi, man! And John jumps in the front and says, take me to the Chateau Marmont, you know, off, gone, like that. At the time, it was not amusing, but in retrospect, it's pretty funny.
Over there is Alan Rubin. Over that side. That way. Alan Rubin. Hi, how are you?
We all know that John has a bad boy, but a giving, wonderful soul. You go to his house and open his refrigerator like he would do it in your house, you know. You felt like you were at your friend's, and he would kill for his friends.
John was the type of person that if he decided you were his friend, then he more or less looked after you from then on. And he was quite a faithful friend to me.
The guys are always partying and stuff. I was, and still am, sort of like a loner, you know. But whenever he saw me sitting over in the corner anywhere, he'd always come over and says, Matt, he says, what's the matter? He says, are you okay?
He was a serious individual, but he was always clowning around, you know, and that was kind of about the basic of it, you know. And he was just a great guy, and we hung out. He'd come by the house, you know, and sit there and clean out my refrigerator. When he run out of food, he'd go somewhere else, you know. But no, he was just a super guy, a very, very giving guy, and it was a lot of fun. And
he's also a person who might show up at your house at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I loved him very much and still miss him.
John was kind of, like I say, you wanted him as your next door neighbor. You want to hug him.
John was a wonderful person. I mean, I adored him. And in fact, everybody adored John Belushi.
This is Mr. John Belushi and Mr. Dan Polaroid. Mr. Dan Polaroid. I've been calling him everything right. Now, just a minute. I'll get you in a few minutes. You stay back till I call you. Now, I've compared these people, and I may have to swallow all of this. You understand? I may, because I'm figuring on them to take their places. We'll just say this, Abbott and Costello, Hope and Crosby, and Martin and Lewis, and Sinatra and his little group and everything like that, but they couldn't carry these guys jockstrap. You know what I mean?
One night, nobody could find John. We didn't know where he was. We needed him for a shot. And someone said, well, I saw him walking over across the street. He crossed the street and went into that neighborhood over there. So we began to look for him, and we went to a house in the neighborhood, sort of basically, you know, looking for telltale signs of him. And someone said, oh, yeah, he went into that house there. We knocked on the door, and the guy came to the door, and he said, yes, Mr. Belushi's in. He's in on the couch. He's asleep. Perfect stranger. Turned out John had walked off the set, gone to somebody's house, knocked on the door, said, you know who I am, John Belushi. I'm tired, I'm hungry. He walked into the guy's fridge, opened the fridge, stood there at the fridge, the guy said, basically made himself a sandwich, had a glass of milk, you know, and then said, can I crash out on your couch? Perfect stranger, crashed out on the couch. So John really was America's guest, and that really crystallized it, you know. That was really a funny night.
Jail. Prison I was there that began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. Should have heard us knocked out jail, but sing, let's rock.
The Blues Brothers is a movie that, for whatever reasons, wherever I go all over the world, people love that movie, and these things take on a life of their own.
I would have never imagined that 17 years later I would still be playing with the same guys.
Dan Aykroyd is helped blues probably more than anybody, and John Belushi if he hadn't died. I think from that first movie, there was some criticism given to John and Danny, but they've done more for blues than anybody in the last 20 years.
Dan Aykroyd's passion for rhythm and blues and basically black American music, one of the things the movie did quite successfully was draw attention back to these great artists. And you talk to James Brown or Aretha Franklin or any of these people, and they'll tell you their careers were revitalized, you know, and I'm proud of that. You know, I really am proud of that.
It broadened my audience, and it certainly introduced people to me who were not aware of who I was.
As soon as I got with the Blues Brothers band and we did the Blues Brothers movie, one, I couldn't believe how I was accelerated, man.
I just knew we were making a great movie. In my heart, I knew. And even though maybe the reviews weren't great and people said it wasn't going to do well, I knew it was going to last forever.
I know the fans are there. There's, without question, the fans are there. And they go crazy when we go open a House of Blues and there's 2,000 people and they're all going nuts. I mean, they love this band.
My wife and I were at Epcot Center, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. It was getting kind of dark. And this guy yells, "Man, Murphy Dunn, man. It's Murphy. Is that you?" And I said, "Yeah, what are you going to do?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to. Can I touch you?" I said, "Yeah." It's okay. Hi, how are you? Yeah, it just knocks me out when it happens.
It's funny, though, this one appearance, when I hold up that prophylactic, I'm telling you, it's weird. People still talk to me about it to this day, and they say it cracked them up.
Every now and again, even on the street or somewhere, say, "Hey, it's the Penguin," which is great fun.
The movie is very much like Dragnet, you know, Jack Webb, very straightforward. Thank you, ma'am. Yep.
Certainly something, I did something right, because people love these characters, and they're wonderful things in the movie.
I'm one of his biggest fans. I think he's one of the great filmmakers of our age. He certainly made some of the best pictures of our time.
He's a great director. He's like a directing animal. He's like an animal. If there's an animal called a director, it would be John Landis.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen, take a good look at these two kids, because you're going to see a lot of them, and they're going to say, "Here they come," and none of them go. They come on like we the people and go off like gangbusters.
Shotgun written, ladies. God bless you, sir. Shotgun written.
This production is happy people, very professional people, and very alert people.
Sean Daniel, Vice President of Universal Pictures and a hell of a good guy.
But not for long.
Bob, come here. Look at this. Robert K. Weiss of Robert K. Weiss Presents, the producer of the motion picture. Thank you, Bob. Cut.
I've got to clean up.
When in Hollywood, visit Universal Studios.